Greetings, Darklings, from across the interweb. It is once again I, the Duchess Precious Ken, here for the Sounds and Shadows podcast. And I don't have an unboxing today, but I have an extremely exciting guest. We've had just a run of great, amazing guests, and I'm really thrilled for this one because it's somebody that was both an influence on me when I was younger and has been a part of the music scene and done so much in it, but also kind of like a Gary Newman, where I listened to that music then, but is still putting out to me some of the top tier, new, exciting sounds on the cusp of what is being done. And that's what's so rare and special. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Martin of the band Attrition.
Thank you, and good. I'll say good evening because it is here.
That's true.
I'm in your future. Uh, that was lovely. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate, and it is. I
Yeah,
mean, it's really exciting when I get to do these interviews with somebody who was an influence on me and kind of music that I've done for years and years. And like I said, I think it's so great. A lot of bands I know are coming back out now, especially in the dark scene of, goth, post-punk,
yeah, yeah,
industrial, but a lot of them to me are sticking to their guns, of what brought them there a lot of times.
yeah.
And I find that's what was so exciting in particular, and we're going to talk about this, but like when I heard the Great Derailer, a couple years back,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just like, not only is this brilliant and has a guest singer of one of my favorite bands,
Oh,
but
yeah,
also it it feels fresh, it feels new, it feels, I don't know, like you took steampunk out of time and put it
yeah.
back into like a modern industrial feel that just, I don't know, just had this brass and steam, coming out of it, and just a very like turn of the century feel at the same time as being electronic and futuristic.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to retread the old things. It's hard. Not. It's hard. I don't want. I mean, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel every time,
Sure.
but and it's obvious. It's still attrition. I mean, a lot of people go, "Oh yeah, you can tell." I don't
You
know.
do have one of those distinctive voices, Martin, that,
Yeah,
that tends to, no matter when you hear it, it rings through and you're like, that's Martin.
yeah. I always like it when people say, "Well, when you talk, you don't sound like on the records." And I say, I don't think Pavarotti used to either. You know,
You don't think he walked into a room and was like, can you please hand
that's
me a
right.
Diet Coke?
But it's a different thing, isn't it? I don't think and it was. I never contrived to be like that. It just happened. But yeah, yeah. I had a lot of guests as well. So having Emka on the Great Derailer was
We're going to
lovely.
talk
So,
about that in detail because, again,
all
I'm
right,
a
I'll
huge
save it.
fan
I'll save
and I
it.
really want to hit on that. But I
Yeah,
want to give people a little bit of base to start out with, for maybe who weren't as familiar with you. And
yeah,
one of the things I always like to, this is an interesting one for me because you started out, if I'm not wrong, doing a music review type page back in Coventry, right? In um
yeah.
alternative um
Sounds.
alternative sounds. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you started
yeah,
out kind of doing that, and so I'm always curious. There was some moment that happened back then where you heard a band, you heard a record, you saw something, and pop, the light went off, and you said, "This is me," you know.
yeah.
And what was for you that moment that kind of started you on this road? And I'm also kind of curious because I've had quite a few British bad guests, that have been in the scene for a long time, and there is a
Yeah.
common thread amongst them. I have written it on the back of this piece of paper, and
Oh,
I'm curious as to what your answer is going to be and if it matches up.
right. So there was a moment when I needed to be involved with music. Um, when I heard something, which was when I was an art student as well. I was just gone, so. so I could drop out later. And that was the Sex Pistols and punk, and that was like, I need to do music, that like it was 18-year-old, angry 18-year-old.
Right.
That's for me, so that's the beginning, although yeah, well, I still like them, so yeah. But then I had, I've got I don't know anything about music, I still say that now, although people tell me to shut up. But so I just thought, well, I can't play anything, and everyone, there was a lot of fanzines at the time,
Right.
people writing. There was all the new, it's punk, and then it was going post-punk, because
Mhm.
I started my fanzine in 1979, so it was just beginning to be Joy Division
Yeah.
and particularly them, but for me, but so I did the fanzine
Mhm.
for a couple of, well, nearly 2 years, and in fact, like you mentioned Gary Newman, I interviewed Gary Newman in 1980 when he was on the
Wow.
Cars tour, so he came to Coventry. It's funny, I just went to see my mum and dad this afternoon. They're pretty old. I like to pop over, and I go to the bus sometimes. And at the bus station in Coventry, there's a mural of Coventry music history, and there's of course a lot of two tone and the specials, and
Right.
that was
Specials. Yep.
also
That's one I
around.
always
And
think of.
yeah, I mean, I love it as now. I love that, and I knew them
Yeah.
and would write about them at the time. But I'm on the wall there with my fanzine and stuff, so it's funny, I said I'd prefer a statue, but I made it part of the
Well,
mural.
hey, there's still time, and you are still putting out great stuff, sir.
Yeah, well, it was for the fanzine I got. They were going to put something about attrition, and then they didn't, because obviously I suppose there was only so much space.
Sure.
But attrition was, to be fair, wasn't really a Coventry thing, because I soon went round the world, and it'd
Yeah.
be a bit ridiculous for a band to be just in their hometown.
So
So yeah, I started with that. But musically, when I started, it was post-punk, and it was bands like Cabaret Voltaire. Really is probably one of the
yeah.
biggest influences. And then just hearing experimental industrial and thinking, oh, I don't have to learn a guitar. I did try, actually. I tried to learn a guitar, and then I ended up playing it with a brick and a
I was
tape
gonna
loop.
say you could still play guitar, you just have to like smash it into a steel drum and then you have
Well,
industrial,
that's right. That's kind of what I ended up doing. Did play a little bit of bass, and it's on a couple of live recordings. But then Julia, that was the singer, and also
Yep.
I mean, originally my girlfriend when we started, she was a good bass. She is a good bass player, so she bought a fretless bass, and I just gave up. I didn't know where the notes were. That's what I mean. I didn't have a musical background, so that was the beginning, and then and yeah, nobody really liked us in Coventry because it was a bit weird. Should have been. I should have
You were a
been.
bit too far ahead of your time for
I
the
think. Well,
quiet town of Coventry.
it was. Well, it was not. There's all the two tone. Everyone was. It was quite
Yeah.
buzzing, but it was punk to ska. I should have lived in Sheffield. That would have been better. The bands up there, but but then therefore I moved. We went away and did it, and that was better. That was the best thing to happen, really.
When you said you went away, I know one of the early tours you did is another band that I love very much, the legendary Pink Dots,
Yeah,
right? That was one of your first original tours
that
that
was
you
the
went
first
on.
proper tour abroad. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I was going to guess. So from I think I've done Martin King, Rodney Orpheus lately,
All right.
John Robb, like a lot of, and it seems like this common thread from a lot of these early goth industrial guys that all came from is that they started out being really into Hawkwind,
Oh well,
and that
I like Hawkwind, but it
does kind of
wasn't the.
having a psychedelic vibe, I think, to
Yeah,
your
I
industrial,
bought
and
Silver
electronic
Machine.
style.
Yeah, I mean, they're not so big for me. I was more into Roxy Music in the early days with Eno and stuff like that.
Sure.
Uh, but the same sort of time. Yeah, Hawkins is, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I also got into Crass and the anarchist punk thing, and we had a song on one of
Some of
their
my
albums.
favorite punk for sure.
Yeah, it's proper grown up political punk, isn't it? Yeah.
So
Mm.
I want to move on now because, like I
Yeah.
said, you've done a lot of I don't know, fresh, original things since then. You've been making and putting out albums through years. You had some time on Project Records.
Yeah.
I just did an interview with Sam, and
Right.
some amazing material there. But I rediscovered you again when you had this new single come out that you worked with Amit, The Great Derailer. Tell me a
Right.
little bit, especially because the video, everything. We're gonna play that one at the end of part one of the interview. We always spin
Oh,
out
yeah.
something and
Yeah, I
we'll
like
play
it.
that one. But tell me what was kind of the impetus or inspiration of that song that brought you back, and what it was like working with Amit on it.
Derailer itself. Interestingly, I thought in the video, it was just before lockdown, really, because it came out in
Mhm.
January 2020, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Um, and then there was that. When we were wearing gas masks, well, I wasn't, but the others were.
Yeah.
And it was before, it's nothing to do with the, COVID. And I thought, wow, that's prophetic, rather than pathetic. And it was it was great to do all that because I hadn't done a lot of videos either. And
Sure.
then Emka sent me the video of her, and we like mixed it all in. It
Yeah.
worked quite well because she wasn't actually here. I'd met her because we played in Budapest that in
Oh,
2017. We played with with Black Nail Cabaret and stuff,
yeah.
and that's when I met her, which was nice. So that's how we were chatting.
And I feel like you two had, especially in that song, just your voices matched so perfectly by being so far on opposite sides of the spectrum that it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
meshed in such a lovely and powerful way of kind of your growling, sinister menace and like her kind of ethereal, beautiful operatic sound. And they just blended together in such a
yeah.
captivating way.
Yeah, and then that's really how Julia always was, when we started. It was
Mhm.
definitely fitted. And the actual song itself, The Great Derailer, it was interesting because I talked to Emka about it, the lyrics, and to me, it was a little bit more like an anarchist bringing down of things. But she was talking about their, is he President Orban? The Hungarian is a bit
Oh,
dodgy.
yeah.
He's very dodgy. And she was talking about him derailing the country from that way. So it's like, yes, it has got both sides to that. And it's what you look at yourself within it.
And I think that's just it going along with being prophetic. Yeah, there is the pandemic and everything and kind of,
Yeah,
but the idea of these powerful people tearing the world down with them in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Like you said, whether you're speaking of Hungary, England or me here in America, there is no
yeah,
shortage of politicians and rich men, I feel right now, tearing us all down with the great weight of kind of their control.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it was just, it's just looking at that really. So
Yeah.
that was the start of that album, and the guy that did Anthony Weir that made the video, he'd never done one before, but he was a great photographer, and sadly he died last month. So I've used on the new, probably jumping ahead, but on the Switch EP, it's one of his photos of me that. So I've given him a
That's a real
dedication
shame to
to him.
hear.
Yeah. So yeah, and he did it, and he worked at the university, so we used all the facilities, so it was free.
Well, I mean, that's always real
That's
because it
always a
is. I
good
mean,
price.
videos today, it has to be a part of what you're doing. I mean, that's a lot of times how people are absorbing content, at least to get interested.
Yeah, it's
And
important.
I
Yeah,
think that's a big change from back in the day when we would just walk into record stores and kind of dig through the stacks, and you might not even know anything about it, but the cover art or
yeah.
something
Oh, I
just
bought
struck
so many
out to
punk
you, and
singles. Yeah,
yeah.
all the punk
So
singles I bought. It's a good. That's a good cover. I'll have that. Yeah,
but yeah, I think that's something that the video is a big part of it now, and it can be very, very expensive. And as artists and musicians, you've always been a big DIY person, someone to find
yeah,
a way to make the most of what you had, kind of that punk rock ethos.
yeah. I've always liked that. The whole thing, sort of. doing the fanzine, and I'd trade with other fanzine people like John Robb. He was one. We used to send
Oh
them to
wow,
each
yeah.
other in like 1979 or something. And so I've, and then you'd get gigs because fanzine people almost always started a band.
Right.
So then you'd go, oh, can we play in Nottingham and you can play here, and just a little gig. But it started to get out and about and meet people.
I can relate thoroughly that,
Yeah,
Sounds and Shadows has set me up with
yeah,
a lot of gigs for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's the same. And actually, when we went through the whole '90s where CD sales were bigger, and
Mhm.
when we were on Project, and then it all kind of collapsed with the, like, at the time, the illegal downloading, and
Yeah.
I guess Napster.
Napster stuff and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it killed the CD sales. They were also too expensive as well, so that was not helping. But when it became much more independent and bands doing small limited releases, I thought, oh, this is all right. This is how I started. So
Yeah.
I was happy. I didn't mind, just didn't sell as many, but I never really did it for that, So it
And
was,
I think that might be coming back full circle again. And I think maybe as, like you said, records, if they can find a way to get the factories back in order,
yeah,
and because there is I think a hunger in the market for them, and that's just it. I'll say I'm a person who I have a large digital library, and I have a ton
yeah,
of stuff I'm listening to all the time. But if I'm listening to something a lot and hearing it, I want to buy the LP. I want to
yeah,
smell it. I want to hold it in my hands. There's a ritual to that. And so I think
yeah,
that is still there for people that are very invested in a band. But in order to get people invested, I think digital is how you're bringing them in and making them a part of what you do.
yeah. I mean, I personally, I listen mostly on YouTube or Spotify or something. I probably had so many promos and so many records over the years. And I work with music all day, because I do mastering and mixing in my
Yeah.
studio. So there is a little bit where I don't even need to have that record because I worked with it. It's on my hard drive, and it it's in a way it's a shame, but in another way, it doesn't matter. I
But
still
in
love
some ways,
music.
mixing and mastering it, you probably have to go through so many times. It's in the hard drive of your brain
Yeah,
at that time because you
I know
listen
you.
to it a
Yeah.
hundred times.
Well, yes, that's like some of my favorite albums. I'll randomly say "Unknown Pleasures" or something, and
Sure.
I'm like, I don't need to hear it because I know it.
Right.
It's impregnated. But and every now and then it's lovely to hear it, and it always sounds different to what you remember. But
It was funny. Your Project Records mate that was on there. I just interviewed Voltaire,
oh yeah,
and it that was a huge deal for me in college. His
right,
albums, because
yeah,
I don't know if we do kind of very silly goth, funny goth. They're the goth style, but the lyrics are very whimsical and silly, which I got very much from. I heard him in college and said to me, you know what? Like, this doesn't have to be depressing just because it sounds like this. It could be
yeah,
about
yeah,
anything. And I went back and was talking to Katie about it and hit play on one of his, and all of a sudden, I don't think I'd listened to it in 15, 20 years, that album.
right,
But
yeah,
I knew every single lyric, just like flipping on a switch. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remastered one of his albums a
oh
couple of
wow.
years ago, but Sam arranged it, but it wasn't for Project. But I knew Voltaire from, he'd done a couple of shows in
Yeah.
like 2000, and I remember getting drunk with him in Atlanta once. But yes, I haven't seen him for.
Very, very charismatic human for certain.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so what I'd love to hear about now is you've kind of talked about this and you have the new EP that you're sitting on. You
yeah.
have everything pretty much done for it and you're looking for the right way and time to release it. But tell me a little bit to whet people's appetite and get them excited. What is new and special about this record? Because like you said, you don't ever want to just be doing the same thing. And you've kept
Yeah.
moving and evolving all these years. What do you feel like is something you did new with this EP that you'd never tried to do before?
Right. Yes. Good thing. Good question. it's in terms of musicality, I'd really, I started off with old analog equipment, and then I went into starting in the 90s, 2000, much more software based,
Yeah,
which was great at the time. But now I've been getting lots of hardware, modular, I've been, uh, and on the new album, it's like just shows a face because it hasn't been. I didn't start writing with it, so there's that. But that's interesting to me because I'm
yeah,
using different instruments. I also had, because I used to always have Julia was in the band for
right,
since the beginning. And the last thing she recorded was on Dante's Kitchen in 2004, but she didn't want to play live, so it made it difficult.
sure.
So I tried different singers, and then on the new album that's just about to come out, I thought I'm not having one female singer. I'll have lots of guests. So
Yeah,
that's quite different. So each song has a slightly different character. So there's Yvette from Vaseline on one track,
yeah.
on the Alibi, uh, and then but also then last year the original lineup of Attrition asked me could they come back and do it again, and
Oh,
that's Julia and her brother Ashley, who actually he works at Google. He lives in San Francisco,
oh,
and
wow.
he's been there since the 90s, I think. So and they both said, "Oh," and I thought, "Oh, well, I was doing it. Oh, it was all right. I was doing it anyway. It wasn't my idea." Then I thought, "Oh, that's quite nice." So since we played at Infest it's a festival in Bradford in the
Mhm.
UK, which is a good one, and then we played that in August. That was the original lineup returning. So and Julia, so basically Julia's sung on two of the songs as well on the new album. So that's quite interesting. So it's all different singers, and some are
Right.
familiar, as you
But
know.
you also, at the same time, while having all the different singers, came full circle of going from modular synths to digital back to modular, and now you also
It's a
came back
mix
to,
now. It's all a mix, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, also the other thing is during lockdown, I thought I was living on my own here, so it was ever so weird because I'm used to being with lots of people usually. Quite like
sure,
being on my own actually sometimes, but and touring, and we lost all our tours, and everyone did.
yeah,
But I thought, oh, I've always fancied making the video, so I kind of learned the basics of doing it and bought lights and cameras, different things, a little bit of
sure.
kit. So I did that. So for the Alibi song, which I put out that then, I'd made that video. So that's my first.
Wow. Now, do you feel like there is a better connection you can have from when you're writing a song, you have an idea in your head, and then you're also the one who kind of organizes the visual conception to accompany it? Does that kind of change your process at all in how you kind of go into both the video part and the songwriting?
Well, the songwriting had already been done in this case,
Sure.
so that didn't change. But it's interesting because I've always had ideas because I read, like I say, I started off as an art student, and
Yeah.
I still see music in pictures mainly. I just, I just like usually a bleak Dali-esque landscape, but it's like it's quite fun as well. Uh, so I always, it's that synesthesia where I do always see music in pictures. It's frequencies, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
it's just. So that meant, I used to paint, and I haven't done it for ages, but I did have a phase of painting in in about 1990,
Mhm.
and then I came up with lots of song and album titles, like so a lot of the 90s album
Yeah.
titles, Tricky Business and Hidden Agenda, Three Arms. A lot of those came from painting, so I quite like it because I thought it's more cerebral than doing music,
Yeah. Did you
Distinction.
ever use for like liner note art or anything like that, any of the paintings that you did that kind of went with the songs in that time?
I hadn't because I thought I didn't feel at the time. I didn't feel my painting. I liked the concepts, but I didn't feel they were good enough compared to the people that did the covers, really. So
Sure.
even though sometimes they took an idea I had and then just made it executed in a better fashion, we'll say. So I did the demo, but yes, I might go back and do that.
I mean, that's always nice too. If you have a concept or idea like that, and you're to the point of you where you've had a career where you have so many connections, so many great artists that it must be nice to just be able to reach out and say, okay, here's what I'm looking for, and here's what I want to see in this. But somebody with a better hand.
That's right, yeah, because I don't
make this happen for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I had time and concentrated on art, then I'm sure I would. But yeah, and I often would just look at their work and go, "Wow, that would really fit. That's right." And so I'll ask them, and then they've already made it,
Wonderful. Well, we are coming up here. I have loved the first part of this discussion.
Yes.
We are going to come back for part 2 in a moment here with Martin of Attrition. And we have a lot of fascinating stuff still to discuss. This has been a lot of fun already. And for part 1, we will be spinning out to The Great Derailer. So please take this song in. Every time I hear it, the hairs on my arms stand up. It's that kind of electricity on the song. So please enjoy and go check out the album and the new EP that is coming up, and hopefully join us for part 2 of the interview in a moment here. And all of you out there in interweb land, keep it dark, y'all.
He started talking and saying weird things.
I felt like God.